Are you a good parent?
I feel like I'm a good parent.
I feel like I'm a good parent. But I heard a quote from Voddie Bauchman, Southern Baptist guy. I think they say I don't know a lot about him, but I've heard a lot of things that he says that I like. And one thing that he said well, actually I don't know when he made the quote, but I found it recently. He says one of our primary goals as parents is to prepare our children for marriage. And I was like, wow, that's crazy, because like I think of the different things I prepare my children for,
Right.
and I never really thought of it in the sense of preparing them for marriage. Now you think of it like, oh, you want to be an example of a marriage, and I agree with that. But I found the story of a guy that he played. So he's originally from Georgia, and he played football for Alabama, Roll Tide. And then he made it into the NFL, but he talks about how he grew up in a Christian household, because it was like Faith in the Family or Focus on the Family story or something like that. He grew up in a Christian household, very Christian household, large family. His parents were really involved in church. He said his mom and dad were like a model marriage. The kids adored them. They adored their marriage. And they prayed together. They did different things like that. It was a Christian home. Since he was a little kid, though, he was a natural-born athlete. And by the time he got into his teens, like he was playing football all year. His parents were spending baducos of money for him to play. And because of this, he became popular. His parents made sure he had the nice stuff. He talks about how elaborate his homecoming and his proms were, and all this stuff that was invested into him as a person, and him achieving and building him up to do these great things. And he gets into the NFL. He ends up getting married, and he said that he gets into marriage, and he found out that he was not set up. He was set up for success in his whole life, but he wasn't set up for his marriage. And he talks about his parents' lack of discipline and the lack of training him on these things about being selfless, pridefulness, and all these things that he says that he feels like his parents lacked on. They poured into him all these things. They talked about Jesus, but they didn't talk about the most important role. Wasn't him being the number one kid at the high school, or getting drafted by the college and the family sitting there and they're putting the hat on he chooses, and all these things. The number one role that he was going to play in his life was going to be his marriage to his spouse, and he said he wasn't properly prepared for that.
Can you say you were?
No.
Is that something that we practice? I don't think so, right? Like,
no, we don't.
I think the closest thing to preparing you to be a husband and a father is who we see, right, in the household.
Well, I agree with that. But one of the things, like he was saying, he's seen it, but he wasn't told that these things that you need to. It's not about you. Like, yeah, you're the superstar and all that stuff, but it's not about you. You're not. You need to be. You teach selflessness.
So, like, did he give examples, or what examples?
He just talked about his home. It was family. They prayed together. He lived in a good Christian home.
But now I'm a father. Now I'm a husband. Like, what did he lack in anything, or he just said?
He said he was a very selfish person, very prideful. He was used to having things his way. Nobody had ever told him that you're wrong. You're not this. Like, no, and he got into a marriage where it wasn't about him anymore. It was about his spouse. And, like, yeah, he's seen his parents get along. And he said that he felt like his dad was a good example of what a Christian husband should look like. But they just never addressed and talked about these things of selflessness. And that reminds me of another thing. He went into where it being a sort of a culture in the home. Like, the Christian was like an actual culture. So if you would have asked him, he would have said, I identify as a Christian.
Right.
And he was a Christian. But he really didn't experience that, I guess, assault on every vile and evil thing that's in you as a human. Like, so in Mark, right, we've talked about Mark before. It says what comes out of a person defiles him, for from within, out of the heart, a man come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness. And he mentions pride and like foolishness and envy. And he's saying like those things weren't really the pride, envy, foolishness. Those things were never really focused on. And those are the things that if you take into a marriage will destroy it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we talk about Jesus forgives sins, or, homosexuality and this and that, but are you teaching your kids to not be? It's not about you, dude.
Yeah.
It's not this. I don't feel like I do. That's why it stood out to me. You know what I mean? I try to be a good example, like you said, but is it more than just me
Being
making sure, like almost pretending in a sense, you're like, no, let's wait till, not saying this is wrong, but like,
so you're old enough.
well, no, let's wait, let's go in the bedroom and we'll fight it. Let's not do it in front of the kids. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
So even that's healthy,
because I feel like
right?
sometimes kids can, it's healthy, but I feel like kids can pick up on
I was
phoniness.
I was gonna say the other way, like, and that's kind of what you're getting at. It is healthy because we are gonna have arguments, we're gonna have disputes, right? And it is healthy to let the children know that it's okay, but we're gonna work this out this way, right? We're not gonna shout at each other, we're not gonna yell at each other, we're not gonna disrespect each other. We're gonna have a communication, and it's not easy.
Yeah,
I'd be lying if I told you that that's how my house goes. Like, we are more of, we get mad and then we kind of go mute.
Yeah,
like just the other day, like I can remember
the silent treatment.
Yeah, but it's not even that. It's not like I'm trying to be silent. Like, it's just like, if we don't talk about it, then for a little bit or whatever, then
maybe it'll go away.
Not even go away, but trying not to get more angry, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, the other day we were driving and we had an argument.
Like you and your wife, or
right,
the kids?
My wife and I. And it wasn't even like the older kids weren't even there. We were dropping off practice, but like we literally drove for about 7 minutes. I looked at the clock without even talking to each other. And is that avoidance or whatever? That's not a healthy way to communicate. I'm more of like, I want to get it resolved kind of person. Mm-hmm. And my wife doesn't. She doesn't want to resolve it right away.
Yeah, the same thing in my home. And getting older and being in my own marriage, what makes me think of it too is I think, like, okay, I always heard, man, love your wife as Christ loved the church, and all these different things, and I get it. And then it's like, but what does that really look like?
Yeah.
And you talk about pride, selfishness, all these things, and I'm like, dude, I pour so much in my kids being the best that they can be, and you want to teach them these things and this and that. But if I set them down and been like, I want you to know that I think the world of you, mm-hmm. and this and that, but you're not always right about something. And sometimes it's better to quickly forgive someone instead of holding grudges. And, speaking of all these, like, really preparing someone for what marriage really looks like. And so that's where I think we lack it in today's society, because we put our kids on a high pedestal. And I didn't read the whole quote from Voddie Bauchman, or however you say his name, but it went into that, putting your kids onto pedestals, and it was saying that that's not your role. Your role is to your spouse, not your kid. But some of your responsibilities, and the main one, is to raising them to be a spouse. Yeah, because that's who you. Yeah, that's your thing, is you and your spouse. Yeah, the kids are just there for a minute, and he's like, honestly, they go about their way, and then it's you and your spouse.
I think that's good, and it's true. Now that I reflect on it, like, I don't think I've had that conversation. I mean, jokingly, I guess sometimes, like, look, dude, like, if you want to be a good husband, like, you got to do this. Do some dishes every now and then, like, do whatever. But I think actual serious dialogue, like with Zeke's 14 now, like, I don't do that. Like, or how to have a conversation with your wife or things like that. So what are some things that you think we should do?
I know what I think would have been given to me, and it would have been those things, right? It was like your pride is gonna get you into a lot of trouble. You should be selfless, put your spouse before yourself, but really explaining what that looks like. Does that mean saying I'm sorry when sometimes you don't feel like like maybe you should be telling me I'm sorry, right? But you're like, nah, you know what I mean? Selflessness.
And that's not an easy thing to do, man. Yeah. Like, I think probably, I think I'm just speaking, but I think we probably struggle with that the most. Even though we try to be selfless, I don't think it's just fleshly, right? Like, it's just natural not to be selfless. Even when, like, we went to that conference and they talked about love languages, and the most people figured out what their love language was, but most people try to push their love language on the spouse.
Yeah.
And that's the whole opposite of what it was, right? So, like, if mine is physical touch, but my wife's isn't, I need to embrace what hers is. It's not about my love language. How do I make her feel loved? But, like, there were situations where wives and husbands were, like, her love language was, like, gifts. So she would buy her husband gifts, right? And buy him gifts. And he's like, why do you keep buying me these freaking gifts? Like, this is stupid. And she would get hurt about it. And I'm like, and I tried to tell her, like, it's because that's your love language.
Yeah.
That's not his. So we have to be selfless. Like, I try, dude. It's hard, bro. Like, I try to be selfless, going back to what a selfless husband and father should look like. But, like, it's hard, dude.
You know, in the
not
Bible,
natural.
it's not. And the Bible talks about wisdom, right? Wisdom, and it talks about train a child up, you know. And if you train, and I'm speaking for men, but if somebody would have told me, like, explain that about the love languages and this and that, and told me that maybe my wife's gonna be different than me and this and that, and I had the wisdom to because I'm supposed to learn her and watch her, you know, and stuff like that, and know my love language is words, right? My wife, I've seen her and her family, they do things for each other, not really worldly kind of
Acts
people.
of service stuff.
Yeah. So, like, say me and my wife get into it, soon she's gonna have, like, oh, I left you a pack of beef jerky, or, you know, something like that, and that's her way of saying,
Right.
I am sorry. You know what I mean?
But for you, you'd rather have the
I'd rather
actual
you
words
come and
of
tell me.
affirmation.
Yeah, come and tell me you're sorry. But if I was wise enough and smart enough, I would have saved myself a whole bunch of trouble and heartache if I would have just been smart enough to know.
Yeah.
She's doing it just in a different way.
No, you're right.
And that's being selfless. You're learning to be selfish. You're learning to show mercy. And, man, you're the headship of the household. So I feel like you should be a little bit more proactive on the selfless side. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not giving women an out. That's a whole nother episode. So I think some Christian women today are mean, dude. But, yeah.
Don't go there.
But yeah, so that's what caught my thing, because I'm in this whole parenting role. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I think for me, like I'm saying, the most important role I've ever filled in my life is my relationship with my wife that I was totally not prepared for. Some of it could go from the example that I was given, but, you know, I know people that have, like, you know, pastors' kids that had the perfect examples, and they're still crappy people.
Bro.
You know what I'm saying?
I was a crappy.
So I think it's more than just being an example, which is important. You should be an example. But if you're a Christian, you're trying to raise Christian kids, it's good to have them in the sports, the music lessons, whatever their hobby is, whatever it is, and them getting their name out and doing all these things. But don't neglect that one day in their future, they're probably going to be a spouse to someone. And that's going to be the most important role they fill. Make sure that you're prepping them for that.
That's good, dude. And I think it's. I just wanted to say this, right? Because what you're talking about, like, I saw what my dad did, but, like, I'm the same way. Like, I don't know. You just fall into it. You're not prepared for it. But it's funny, when I brought up the love languages to my dad, they didn't want to hear it. Like, he was like, nah, that's stupid. Why would we do that? Or you do that? I don't know. Like, maybe it's just the old school, or it's the way that it was the culture, the way they were brought up. Right, woman. Because you got to look at the different times, right? The different times of growing up, the different eras. Like, men were men that worked, and they expected food on the table. Like, it was just a different culture, right? Different. So even that, is that a dialogue to have? Like, it's just different.
That's a dialogue to have. And just because it was different don't mean it was necessarily the right.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I try to tell my dad. Like, they made fun of me, right? Because not make fun of me, but it was like, as a father, he did make fun of me because I went to his love language team.
Yeah.
But I'm like, as a father, like, he'll admit it. Like, he never woke up in the middle of the night to help my mom. Like, he never changed diapers in the middle of the night or fed bottles. And I
slacked on all that.
I tried it, right? Like, I tried it. Now I don't, because I'm old and I'm tired, and we shouldn't be raising babies right now.
Just let the baby cry.
Just let him cry. But like, it's just different, right? So now, how I am with my wife it's going to be different than my father was, or what he would have taught me. So that's something to consider. Even culture changes and how.
Yeah. Some people vow they're not going to be like their parents, and then some people turn into exactly like their parents.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a good. It and we can close with this. But Tony Evans, he's a pastor, he's an author, and all that stuff. He has a book. Going back to the example, and I don't know if he was talking about him specifically or somebody else, but he talks about he grew up in a home where the husband and wife, mom and dad, couldn't get along and this and that. The dad found God, and he said that he used to read the Bible every day, and his son seen him reading the Bible every day, and the mom was just so mean to him. But he still read his Bible and completely changed. He didn't interact. He didn't respond to like they used to.
Yeah.
And he said that made it such an impact on his life.
Wow.
So.
That's good, Charlie. Chuck D.
Chuck Dizzle.
Yeah. So think about that.